Good evening, committee members. I know that there are lot of a lot of members of the committee who have other prior engagements this evening, and so it's a tough night for some people to join us. I think some other, and I think we can discuss it tonight. I think some other committee members are at a point based on where the school board and the school district have landed. Just kind of asking the question again. So, what's our role in this, and what's the proper use of this group moving forward? So my intention tonight was to do three things. One is to just discuss the changes that the CDC made on Friday, and they came quickly. And then subsequently, the Department of Health Services had something come out on Monday for at least guidance with schools and other groups. So that's been moving very fast. So I wanted to just take some time and have us discuss those changes. The second is to discuss our local changes with the option of going optional with mask in the district immediately, and that happened on Monday night with a board decision, and students starting yesterday across our entire district have had the opportunity to, and families have had the opportunity to go optional with their masking. And then I think the third item should be what's the future of the group, and what I have some thoughts, but I would love to hear what others think as well. That's at least three items I think we need to discuss. If there are others, I want to make sure that we create space and time for those of us who are on the call to add other agenda items.
Those sound good to me.
Okay. Laura, Dr. Nolan.
Sounds good. I don't have anything additional.
Okay.
Neither do I. Yep.
Awesome. Well, in this, this should always be the case, no matter what the size of the group is. But since we are such a small, intimate group, I'm assuming everyone is aware of the changes that the CDC have. And I feel silly even making that statement because I know all of you are aware of those changes, but would love to just pause and see what are your thoughts and your analysis of the changes.
Yeah, I can kind of just share, from a public health perspective, this kind of aligns with our shift in our response to the pandemic based on now there's availability of vaccines, there's increased availability in testing, there's some treatment options out there, and our cases are decreasing pretty rapidly, which is great news. The levels we're seeing now are kind of where we were at last July, which was very low. So, we are, comfortable kind of moving to this long-term response right now, lifting some of the more formal mitigation, still reminding our community that, we want people to stay up to date on COVID vaccines. If you're high risk for severe disease, continue to wear masks. If you are symptomatic, continue to wear masks. If you're exposed to COVID, if you're symptomatic, get tested. Sort of the same things we've been, promoting with layered mitigation throughout the course of the pandemic, but kind of just moving toward that longer term response and how we can support our families and, making the best decisions for themselves, and then sort of just being potentially prepared for future variants or those seasonal spikes we might begin to see.
Yeah, I guess I would just echo that what Laura just summarized. And I think we've been talking about that for the last couple of months in terms of, as this scales down, what it's going to look like. It's going to go back to a very localized approach, whether that's at an individual level based on one's risk, or in the cases, the CDC, down to kind of county level, so that we can really have that response based on the data that's in those areas. So I think it's appropriate with all the personal mitigation that we have in front of us with vaccines and treatments. I think too, though, Laura's point on the end is just, this is probably not the end, and that we're, in a place of a downward turn and, at the low end of that. And hopefully that's where we stay. But I guess the unpredictable part is that we don't know, what the trend is going to be around the corner. Laura and I were reflecting before we went live, just, if you look at the data from last year, this is actually following a similar pattern. So, it's just a matter of the ebb and flow until we get to a place where this is, where we are able to control it. But, as people wanted something predictable and something to know where they should be going, I think that this is the right direction.
Just taking some notes here, so thank you. One of the questions I have received from some parents post the board meeting on Monday has been around the issue of, so what happens when things spike up? And how will the school system respond? Does that move us back into a mandated mask space? I asked that question to this group, also knowing, and I just found out about this in the last 48 hours, that there is a bill, I don't think it's had a hearing yet, but there's a bill in the state legislature that would ban the ability of school systems, school districts to mandate masking. I don't know if you have heard about this bill or you're familiar with it, the three of you that are on. So I guess the question that's being posed to me is more around, so to your point, Laura, when the spike comes, because I think what we've seen in these 2 years is that the spikes will come either after spring break or maybe at the end of summer or around Thanksgiving. Those are the trend lines we've seen. What's your counsel?
I think, like we've always said, it'd be great if we had a crystal ball and could give you a very specific answer. But I think now that we have sort of these 2 years behind us and we can anticipate a little bit more when those spikes might be, is just really pushing those recommendations for mask use and testing and making sure that those services are available in our communities and our families know where to look for those resources. If there's new variants that come out that sort of change the game, that could change what that guidance looks like. But as Anne said, hopefully this is, a downturn that, extends for a long period of time, and we can just kind of keep our eye on where things go.
I think spike, when we talk about spikes, it means something totally different now than it did in 2020. Because there is such broad immunity within our community, both vaccine immunity and as well as natural infection immunity. And so when you talk about a spike, if you talk about a spike of cases, and we saw that the Omicron was a very good example of why CDC changed their metrics that they followed, and why just following case numbers didn't work well with Omicron, because spikes in the future, unless it's a completely different virus from everything I think that we know about how the human body's immune system works, from vaccine-induced immunity as well as natural infection, it's going to afford some type of ability to not get really, really ill with future variants, because there probably will be future variants. But when we talk about spikes, I think we have to be really, really careful to not talk about cases. And I think that's what the CDC, and I agree 100% with the shift that the CDC kind of made as far as their risk levels to be hospitalizations. And it wouldn't be a correct thing to do in isolation in 2020, but in 2022, when so many people's bodies have seen this virus, whether it's from a spike protein that was put in by a vaccine or by getting infected, we built up kind of a broader immunity to this. And so the hope would be that even if we have spikes in cases, they won't lead to spikes in hospitalizations where we will have to throw really broad things like mandates at people. I guess that would be my hope. That doesn't fix your question to parents, like how are we gonna face this in the fall or the winter when it comes back again or anything. But hopefully, I mean, I guess the easy answer is, for the most part, up until just before the last couple months, Wauwatosa School District has been really aligned with the CDC. I guess the first few months of the pandemic, when the CDC had no guidance for schools, and the last few months of the pandemic, where Wauwatosa School District kind of broke away from CDC guidance strictly. Other than that, it's been really aligned with CDC guidance. And so I guess that would be the easiest answer to give to parents is we'll follow the CDC and health department's guidance. So I think the CDC seems to know better now than they did in the beginning. I think there's only the 5 of us on here. I think the CDC had a really, really difficult time with this pandemic, and the first 9 months, maybe a year and a half.
We certainly understand, and we're part of that.
Catch up, yeah. But we understand it much more than we did before. And so I would be more, what's the right word? Like I would trust CDC's guidance more going forward on this than initially in the pandemic.
I would add to that, with the new community levels, the CDC has prevention strategies both for the individual level and for the community level. So those would be really good things to look to, is if we stay in medium, just making sure we continue those prevention strategies. If we move to high, shifting towards those. But those are some of the things we look at from the public health standpoint, is making sure that those vaccine resources are available. If we're doing boosters in the fall, what that looks like for our schools and making those available, and then sort of just ongoing year to year after that, kind of monitoring where we go.
Laura, obviously, I mean, my knowledge level with every time I get on this call is nothing. That's why I really respect this group and need you. My reading of the CDC shift shows me that even if a school district is in a county where it is rated as high, that there isn't clear guidance on if masking should be mandated for that school community. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I would say there is not a lot of school-specific guidance in updated CDC community levels. There is just sort of general community guidance that they have applied to schools. So I think we could look for if DHS makes some updates to their school guidance before the fall, we would look to their recommendations. But at this point, yeah, there's not a lot of school-specific.
And I think that's the swing in the communication that I'm receiving now isn't so much from families who have concerns about masking. It's swung to families who saw the benefit in masking and are asking the question, how will you pivot? And, so that's that word pivot again, right? How will you pivot and adjust if there is a change in the CDC level for Milwaukee County? So I think what these families are asking is, what if Milwaukee County hits high again? Are you then prepared as a school system to go to mandated masking? And what I didn't see any guidance from the CDC to school systems to say you should move back. So it feels like they've given more latitude to schools in school districts in that space. But I need your counsel. Am I reading that correctly?
Well, I think the CDC has never mandated masks in schools. They've always provided recommendations about how schools can handle that and make those decisions for themselves. So when it reaches a high community level, it does recommend universal masking indoors, which also applies to K-12 schools and all indoor community settings. So in a sense, yes, it would recommend that, and then you'd have to make that decision. Kind of what Dr. Nolan said is, we just have to keep an eye on what that looks like in the fall and what a spike really means for our community.
Right. Okay. That's great clarification. Thank you. Do you want to move on to what we discussed on Monday night and the decision that was made Monday night with making mask optional? But I think also the other component was shifting the responsibility of monitoring this work to staff with policy. Do you mind if we make that change and shift in our conversation?
No, I think that's fine. Go ahead. I think it sounds like we're all pretty comfortable with the changes in the CDC recommendations, everything.
Yep. So on Monday night, I think the decision to move to optional masking is very self-explanatory, but there's also a policy in our policy manual, and that's policy 8450, that indicates that the management of various degrees or various diseases would rest with staff or the superintendent in that person's team. And so in a lot of school districts have started to make this move of shifting out of having this being the mitigation issues, shifting mitigation issues out of board decisions and making it more staff decisions. And so that was also approved on Monday night. The challenge, I think, is that policy 8450 does not have administrative guidelines. So it has very general policy language, which policy language is supposed to be general in its form, but it doesn't provide specifics in terms of how it will be implemented. Would it be helpful if I pulled up policy 8450?
Yeah, and I've got some questions about the diseases. I mean, there are different category levels of diseases in Wisconsin based on state statute, and COVID is a category 1 disease. But your point about why the implementation or the operation of how one responds to each of the diseases that are, on our public health lists, that makes total sense, because every disease is going to have a different type of mitigation and different response. But I'm curious about your policy in reference to, again, the different categories of diseases.
Sure, I think I can share my screen. Oh, Jamie, do you mind providing me access?
I didn't enable that.
No, it's okay.
Okay, you got it right here.
All right, thanks. Try it again. There we go. Okay. Can you see that? I'll do this.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. I think I can enlarge it even. I'm afraid to enlarge
I
it.
believe if you, on the left-hand side where it says search active policies, I think if you click those 3 little bars, that will collapse that left-hand menu. Oh, no, it doesn't. Sorry, my bad. If you want to zoom in on the screen, you could hit Command 0 and it will.
Yeah.
There you go. Or plus.
Does that help?
Yep.
Okay. I think, Ann, to your point, and I would love to hear your opinion, but I think, does COVID, I highlighted that area, do we meet the needs of COVID with that highlighted language?
Not being the core counsel for the district, I can't really say yes or no, but this language does not align with state statute for disease. But again, in terms of the purposes of giving control of the response back to the administration, I think that general type of sentence and the reference to chapter, I think there's statute 252 would do that.
Okay.
But I guess the point that I'm trying to make, which maybe is not necessary, is just that there are, this is only a handful of diseases that are in chapter 252. So all of those diseases would fall under the jurisdiction of the state and local health department in terms of mitigation and response. It doesn't mean that they dictate to the school district what to do, but they are your resource for technical assistance support in responding.
Should I scroll down? Okay.
Just to kind of build off of what Anne said, this isn't necessarily all encompassing. The state statute is extremely lengthy, so you're not going to encompass all of that here in this sort of brief policy. But that being said, we worked closely with the school district, well before COVID, to handle these things. And I have, a lot of confidence in our ability to do that going forward. So I don't have really any worries about this change.
Dr. Means, can you go back up to the top again really
Sure.
quick? Thanks. So is this saying in, I guess it would be paragraph 3, that like if the state health department mandated COVID immunizations, that the Wauwatosa School District would mandate COVID vaccination?
That's the way I read it, Dr. Nolan.
And if the state health department mandated masks in schools, then Wauwatosa Health School District would mandate masks in schools as well?
Yes.
Okay. You're comfortable with that?
I am. And as Laura said, while it hasn't been mandated, she's an important resource. I know there are times where Caitlin may call her and then I call her. And I think we know very clearly internally that working in conjunction with Laura is the appropriate path.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr.
I was just going to say, I think that you asked the question before of what to say to the parents that were asking you questions about what is going to happen with future spikes and everything. I do believe like this looks like your answer to that question.
I think so.
Yeah. Go ahead, Anne. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to make the point, and I know this seems like the weeds, but the state statute gives the authority to the state health department, which delegates that authority to the local health department. So, in the absence of those entities creating mandates, you have your local policy to rest on. So the state hasn't mandated that, vaccines and masks, neither has the local health department, and therefore, it goes to the lowest level, in this case, the district, to set that policy. So if the state health department, or if the local health department, if Laura issued an order, then under 252, you would have to follow that order.
Correct.
So that just trying to explain the chain of sort of authority here. So just because you have this policy, back to your point, Sean, just because you have this policy, if the state or local government puts out a policy or passes an ordinance or issues an order, that's the one that has to be in place. That's true at an individual level too. Say, for example, if there were somebody with tuberculosis, moving aside from COVID, if they had tuberculosis and were under an order for quarantine, similar to, the orders for quarantine under COVID, then that order would be in place regardless of what the school district determined.
And I think I've said this before, and Laura and I are on a call every other week with area superintendents and public health officials where, ultimately school superintendents and school boards have been thrust into the role of public health officials. We don't want to be there. I think paragraph 3, to Dr. Nolan's point, paragraph 3, if we follow 8450 to the letter of the policy, if there is a directive from either DHS or the local Department of Health, that then, to your point, Ann, that's our guidance, right? That's our direction.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the policy. I think one thing that Caitlin and I realize, because if you go to our board docs, and I'm just showing it here, there's something called administrative guidelines, because the way that policies work, you first create, the board is charged with creating a general direction, and then once they pass a policy, it's our job to develop administrative guidelines on how we're going to implement the policy. And when you go to administrative guidelines for the 8000 series, there isn't a administrative guidelines for 8450. So we're starting the process of looking around and finding best practices. Laura's taught me she's taken a lot of time to teach me that layered mitigation strategy. And I think incorporating those steps in our administrative guidelines to make sure that just because we may not use a certain mitigation strategy doesn't mean that we are abandoning all of our strategies. And so making sure that we're still staying true to that work is something that that we're starting the process of trying to put together administrative guidelines. But I think this kind of shifts us into the third topic I wanted to discuss tonight, which is what is the future of this group. And I think it would be prudent, wise for the district to present our administrative guideline recommendations to this group for feedback around this policy. I think it would be important for this group to weigh in and give direction and advice on that administrative guideline. I would want that from this group. I know some people have said, do we need to disband based on the fact that 8450 is now in place? What I would suggest is, before we make that final decision, I think we have one task to do, and that is allowing the group to weigh in on the guideline language for this policy. But I'll pause and see what does the group think.
I think it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to make administrative guidelines for a policy, such a broad policy that covers, hundreds of different communicable diseases. Even if you created a subset of administrative guidelines for COVID, as we know from the last 2 years, those are going to continually be changing. So, my recommendation would be to keep yourself having flexibility within your guidelines and, looking at the resources that are available to you, the public health department, the state DPI, and using your resources as your guidelines. Because the minute you write these, then they're going to be outdated.
Right. We've learned that, right? We've lived it. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably why there's never been one written. I mean, the state and DPI have put out the guidelines for, responding to COVID outbreak and mitigation in schools. So that right there is a set of guidelines if this district chooses to adopt those.
Right.
I agree with Anne. I mean, as we were talking through that, I was trying to imagine what you would include in there, and it either seems huge or almost impossible to create something that would hold up against all the different diseases and potential future changes.
I think just like our students, you guys can do hard things, and I'd be happy to take a look at it. I don't know if you're going to hit the mark. I agree, it's going to be a hard mark to hit, but I guess your initial question was not can you do it, but do you think it would be valuable for us to look at it after you do it? And I'd be more than happy to, and I think it would be valuable for the group to look at it. Whether or not we have any constructive feedback, we'll see in the future.
I'm glad to hear you say that, Dr. Nolan. I was hoping that would be the response. I think it would be foolish, I'll use that word, for us to attempt to draft some type of guidelines and not allow this group to weigh in and give counsel. And so that's something that I would appreciate and would like to seek from all of you. And I think once we then have those guidelines, and Laura and everyone, Sean, I think keeping them flexible enough where we can address issues, yet having some level of substance is really our goal. Again, to do that type of work in a vacuum would feel short-sighted to me if we didn't bring it to you for feedback.
Yeah, then that's fine. We can do that. I do wonder though about the longevity of this group. I mean, it seems that the need for us in this role seems to be less and less.
And I say this with all respect for everyone and the knowledge that's here, my vision of this would be having one last meeting where we allow the group to weigh in on the guidelines, and then we meet as necessary moving forward. That would be my suggestion to the group.
Yeah, that sounds appropriate. Thankfully, we have run our course, I think, which is good. That's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good to me too. I would ask if we could get the guidelines well in advance of the meeting, just so we have enough time to kind of review. If it is lengthy, gives a chance to work through that.
That's a fair request, and I'll make sure that happens. I'll probably talk to you behind the scenes before we even get it out to the full group.
Yeah,
so
I would recommend that.
So we'll be in contact for sure. Okay. Then what I would propose is that we've met our threshold of agenda items for tonight. That our next goal is to set up a meeting for April. I think I may need some more time. I know we've said that we would meet the first Wednesday of every month, but with spring break, it may be helpful to have some more time. So we'll send out a meeting date. It'll be a Wednesday at 7, and I'll make sure that you have at least a week time to sit with the draft administrative guidelines, and then we'll use that meeting to go through it, get feedback, and then to celebrate the fact, as Sean said, to celebrate the fact that maybe we have run an appropriate course with this, and that is something to celebrate. And at a minimum, maybe celebration is too strong of a word. At a minimum, acknowledge and praise the good work of this group.
Can I recommend that we aim for that first Wednesday in May, since a number of us blocked our calendars off for that day? I worry about just the random meeting coming up, and then we may not have that booked. Yeah.
No, I like that. I like that a lot, and thank you. And it gives us more time too. So let's plan on our next meeting, and our final meeting in the books would be May 4th. Then anytime after May 4th would be on a need basis.
Sounds very appropriate. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all. I'll try to write something up that captures what we did tonight. Jamie did a great job. It's recorded, so if people need to watch it, they can. And we'll get together again on May 4th.
Excellent.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.